Morning, Jen.
Good day to you. Good. You know what? The other day, I was walking into just the grocery store, and this dude was walking like we were walking on perpendicular paths. As he walked in front of me, he said, "Have a good day, good sir." No fedora or anything. I wasn't expecting that kind of thing from him, but still, it made me smile. It was nice, and I
I
thought
don't
maybe
understand where you're going with this.
just just you said good morning, and I said I was about to say good
Oh,
day, good sir, and I just thought, yeah,
the
there's
world
nothing
is
wrong
a
with saying something nice to a stranger. That was
the world is a
kind of
wonderful
pleasant.
place,
Yeah.
and people are nice.
It's nice to be nice.
People are nice. The world is good, and I'm glad that person wished you a good morning.
Yeah, it was lovely.
I think there's also a strong sort of like I don't want to attribute it directly to Dungeons and Dragons subculture, but like
Mm,
that sort of like chivalry based
yeah,
communication thing. I think it's more prevalent than people realize.
that's an interesting thought. The way that this person said this thing definitely had that flavor to it. I mean, it was only a hair's breadth away from "hail and well met." Maybe that was
Exactly.
some what was going on there.
Yeah, you got to watch out for that. You got to watch out for that. Well, we're going to talk about you. You said you installed some new recording gear.
Yeah, this weekend I was excited I had a little bit of fun nerding out about recording stuff. As maybe a lot of people who listen to the podcast have experienced, we play loud instruments. That's like challenge number
Yeah,
1,
yeah, that is
whether you're a
challenge number
drummer
one.
or a piper.
You know what's weird is, at least for bagpipe, let's pause before we go on to snare drumming.
Mm,
But at least for bagpipers, the real challenge is that our instrument varies widely in amplitude depending on what note you're playing.
it does, man, and there's nothing like recording to make you really realize just how much of a difference there is from one note to
Yeah.
the next, yeah.
And so mass market recording tech, like for example, your iPhone, actually
Mhm.
has really nice microphones built into this nowadays. But what they do on the software side of things is they do at least what they used to call auto gain adjust,
Yeah.
which means that the software is constantly trying to adjust the microphone to get the subject full in the mix. So what'll happen is if the sound is really quiet, right, the software will open up that microphone to let as much sound as possible in. And then if the sound that you're recording is very loud, it actually closes down the aperture, for lack of a better word, right?
Mhm.
It tones things down so that the loud sounds don't cause tons of distortion. But the software is constantly doing this with your phone.
Yeah.
And it works really well for speech and other things where, because let's face it, 99% of the time on your iPhone, you're recording or you're calling or you're doing something where you want to hear what people are saying clearly. So it's a
Yeah.
miracle. The software is a miracle for fidelity of speech, but it's a bit of a disaster for instrumentalists who want to record themselves in any sort of clarity because it's moving around all the time. And
Yeah.
if you ever record yourself on the pipes, and when you look at that waveform, it jumps all over the place in amplitude.
Mm.
And that's that's what it's supposed to do, right? The low G is considerably more amplitude than the high A. It's just a
Yeah.
fact. But then other notes are mysteriously weird.
Mhm.
Is it the F that's strangely low? I can't remember the last time I looked
That's
at it,
how it
but
is for me, yeah. Yeah, the F
yeah,
is often really low compared to the rest of them, yeah.
yeah, exactly. If you play an F, your iPhone is going to adjust the microphone and turn it up.
Yeah.
But then when you play a low G, it's going to be like, oh crap, that's loud. And it's going to turn it down.
Yeah.
And so the result is nowadays you can get an iPhone recording that's not crazy distorted, but there's so much fluctuation going on that the quality of the recording isn't actually great, is it? Like no one wants to listen to a recording of a piper or a pipe band that's just recorded on a straight up iPhone. Not really. It's not
Yeah.
terrible. It's not like it used to be, but it's not terrible, but it's still not pure. What we actually need to do as musicians is we need to be able to record ourselves with no gain adjustment, no
Mhm.
software gain adjustment. We want to set the gain ourselves and then just record it and record it in its pure form.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't play every instrument in the world, so I don't really know exactly which ones are most relatable to this, but with bagpipes, it seems like it's this double whammy where not only is the quietest note that can come from the chanter way quieter than the loudest note, it's even physically turned around so it's facing the other direction. So if
Yeah.
you have a
Yep.
microphone in front of you, which is probably the most logical place to put one, that high A is just like fated to be like way down below, which, I mean, obviously that's idiomatic to the instrument. Like we use that. So that's fine. But like you say,
Yeah.
when we're throwing off the software of the recording device, it can be problematic.
It's definitely problematic. Yeah. And at the end of the day, usually simplicity is what we're looking for. And we'll probably get into that. But so you've started to go down the multiple microphone rabbit hole.
And it's fun. It's fun. And that's part of it is
Yeah.
like, I'm enjoying the process. But I will say that this is the one and only recording device that I've used this for years and years.
This is, by the way, we'll get into it, but
There
this
you
is
go.
still number one. This is just an old one. Like I would never buy this, but I just have it.
Yeah.
And it's always armed. This is the first time it's been unarmed in years. It's always on and armed in my practice room. It's not good for the environment, Jim. I probably wasted like 0.078 milliwatts by just leaving this on all the time.
Gigawatts.
Like I just leave it on all the time. And the gain, by the way, these things have gain adjustment. I don't know if you can.
The physical thing you can touch
so
to
these,
move it up and down.
These Zoom style recorders, they have a manual gain adjust, which is the secret. That's the secret sauce for recording bagpipes well. It's not anything else. It's not number of microphones. It's not anything. It's just that you want to have the manual gain adjust. And this one is set to just below 4. Like that seems to be the sweet spot for Zoom recorders for me anyway. But anyway,
I'd
it's
imagine
all
when
armed.
indoors at least, right?
Yeah, when indoors at least. That's right. But it's always armed in my practice room. So anytime I'm playing, all I have to do is reach over and press one button and it will begin recording myself in extremely nice, high quality at any point. And sometimes I don't even listen back to the recordings, but sometimes I'm like, ooh, that was a good one. Or, ooh, I think that was good. Now I want to send it to, I don't know, Jim McGilvery and see what he thinks about that performance. And it's good to have that stuff.
It's come up a couple times before in the podcast that there's a lot of reasons, and they're important reasons, why it's valuable to record yourself. And one of them, just this weekend, I was getting an organ piece ready, and I did what you mentioned there. I recorded myself and sent it to some of my friends. Not to be like, hey, check out this awesome piece. In that case, it was because I knew I was going to be nervous when performing this piece. So I wanted to
By the way,
myself...
this is Commandment 11.
Look at us.
Right now.
Look at us hopping ahead with the commandments here.
Yeah, Commandment 11. It's the actual 11th commandment. So there used to be 10 commandments. And then I remember exactly where I was. I was walking out of the gym and I was like, son of, I've discovered another commandment. The commandment is thou shalt record thyself. Yes, exactly. Have you ever heard this call will be recorded for quality assurance purposes?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That is a big corporation embracing commandment number 11, which is thou shalt record thyself. Has anyone ever seen chess players after every move, they write in their little logbook what their move was? Have you ever seen that? That's chess players embracing commandment number 11. So a recording is what allows you to go back and analyze your work. There are no successful bagpipers. Hot take, Jim. There are no successful bagpipers that don't embrace recordings in order to improve themselves. The other thing too is when you're performing the bagpipes, it kind of reminds me of, I don't know, playing video games or something. It's an all immersive task, right? All your bandwidth is being focused towards performing well. If you also want to allocate bandwidth to deep and meaningful analysis of your performance, it's not going to go that well for you, right? So recording yourself is a way to allow yourself to focus on your performance and not worry about the deep and meaningful analysis until later. I think that's the key thing. It's
funny. That makes me think of that. What's the giant collider where they make atoms crash into each other and stuff?
Yeah, the Giant Hadron Collider.
The Hadron Collider. And maybe actually now that I think of it, maybe I'm thinking, maybe it's not that device. But there's some sort of event that happens on a micro, like subatomic scale, that one of the weird variables that scientists are trying to grapple with is that these things that they're trying to observe seem to behave differently when being observed than when not being observed. And it just just like bagpipe performance.
Schrodinger, yeah.
Oh yeah, Schrodinger's cat, right?
That's sort of like
I could tie the cat to the jokes about how bagpipes sound like cats. So we could work this together in a way more smooth way, I think. But just like
Yep.
if my bagpipe performance is going to be different if I'm actively observing it than if I'm just completely immersed in it. And so trying to deeply analyze how I'm doing as far as my playing goes while playing is going to affect my playing, and it becomes this loop, right? Yeah, so record it
Yeah.
instead, analyze later.
Yeah. Recording is so, so important. I think it's why people journal. Journaling is sort of like normal everyday life's version of thou shalt record thyself. What was I thinking here? What actually happened? What actually went on? I've had such a crazy year this last year that I wish I journaled
Yeah.
because, on a day-to-day basis, you're like feeling bored or frustrated or something. And it's like you fail to look back at the past year at all the wild and crazy and awesome stuff that happened to you.
Oh, yeah. Every once in a while, the phone photo apps do that for me. They'll show me a summary of the month or something, and I'll be like, whoa,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff happened this month. Usually,
Yeah.
those just serve to make me feel sad because my kids are growing up so fast.
I
But
know.
I'm like, what the heck? Why are you doing this to me, phone? But every once in a while,
Yeah.
it's a pleasant experience.
I think that's another great reason to record yourself. Sometimes you play your P-Brock and you're like, God, that was so crap. I'm such an idiot. I suck.
Yeah.
Life sucks. And then you go back to the recording and it's like, well, actually, yeah, there were some crappy parts, but wow, I really got my pipes in tune well there. And I didn't give myself any credit for how well I'm sounding there. And it's like, oh, man. Sometimes I think performance was crap because my E was out of tune. And then you listen to the recording and you're like, actually, the E doesn't sound that bad at all. I was totally
maybe there are even
overthinking it.
some other things that are really positive, too.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, recording is great to listen to yourself after the fact. But anyway, back to multiple microphones.
Yeah.
I have them too, by the way. You can't
Mhm.
really see them, but I think I'm going to go for a camera move again.
Yeah, go for it. Let's be brave. Dive in there.
Here,
Whoa.
there's my big mixer here. This is a big mixer. This is a stereo pair, right? So that's for recording my bagpipe chanter.
Yeah.
And then up behind me, you can see there's a drone mic up there too.
Yeah.
Okay, put my camera back.
Everybody watching on VR headsets at home just had a wild ride.
Oh, I think I actually got it. Nice. I'm
Yeah.
back. The point being, yeah, I have all these fancy microphones as well. By the way, I can feed in my Blair chanter into that mixer if I want. So it's cool. It's a cool station. But here's my hot take, Jim. And I'm sorry because you recently invested in this cool gear. I mean, I have it too.
Wait, before you give me your hot
Jim,
take,
show us your gear.
there's my drone mic.
Yep. Where's your chanter mic?
Positionable. Right now, my chanter mic, actually, it's funny that we've landed on similar gear. I also have a pair of pencil condensers, which are currently in their case down here on the floor, and that's the stand. I don't know if you'll be able to see this once I reframe it, but that's the stand where I mount them on either side to cross-section fire at the chanter. So they're in boxes right now.
Yeah. So the
now
then,
dash
by the way,
all my
that's,
dreams.
it's a good setup, right? It's a good, nice, basic setup, and you can get really good sound out of it. It certainly gives you, by the way, if you can record in 3 channels simultaneously on your computer, that's helpful.
Yeah, I won't pull my camera off because it doesn't move as easily. But yeah, similarly, I have a little box here where I can plug each of these in individually, and then in the software on the computer say, okay, you record the drones, you record the chanter, you record the other stuff, that kind of thing.
And so it comes into your software as 3 tracks.
Right.
Is that right?
And you can take one track higher or lower or all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can mix and equalize each of the different tracks. And you can get some separation between the chanter and the drones. And so
never like all of it, but some. Yeah.
We've all been there, Jim. What I mean by that is, yeah, like we've all tried that. And here's my hot take though. Nothing beats the sound of a nice stereo microphone recording from a single source, like from a single point in space.
Yeah.
You're never going to get a better sound of a solo pipe than that. Now, asterisks. If you want a highly engineered sound, and if you want to have the ability in post-production to make changes and to try to edit out mistakes, I mean, yeah, it's possible to use a billion microphones and have an expert engineer go in there and try and get that sound to sound pure. But hot take, it's never as enjoyable as a recording done from a single source. A great example of this, and again, I'm speaking a little bit out of school here, but another great example of this is the drone chorus videos of grade 1 pipe bands versus the BBC videos that we get at the Worlds. So the BBC sets up microphones all around the band, and I think they try to do some kind of mix, and I think that's what goes out on the stream. And the resulting sound is muddy and crappy and not very good. And then meanwhile, Drone Chorus gets his from a single point in space, right? Like wherever he is with his camera, I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure. I'll have to get fact checked here, but I'm pretty sure he's recording from a single point. And yes, like I think he goes and he does a few things in post-production, maybe some equalization and whatever, but the Drone Chorus audio is better. Fact. It's better. It's a fact. It's better audio than what the BBC is doing. They have a bunch of bells and whistles and they have microphones set up around the circle. I think you have speed of sound issues the way the BBC does it.
Oh, interesting.
As well.
Some overlap.
Right. So you have let's say you have a microphone at the top of the band where the pipe major is. Let's say you have it about 10 feet behind the band, right? And then let's say you have another microphone 10 feet behind the leading drummer. So you're going to get some drum corps coming through the front mic and the back mic, but the drum corps sound is going to be reaching the mic at different times.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, and it's a big thing. Listen to the drum chorus in particular. Listen to Drone Chorus versus BBC. You can hear how tight and amazing all the drum corps are when you listen to Drone Chorus. And on the BBC, they all sound muddy. And they're not. These corps are not muddy. They're so tight. So much precision.
But the snare hits would be the really obvious place to notice that.
Yep. So at a certain point, you have speed of sound issues. I think that's the primary problem with what the BBC is doing. My conjecture here, that's one of the main reasons people miss the world CDs. Like the world CDs were like at least attempts at recording things a little bit better and some thought put into it. And then, yeah, the BBC sound is sloppy. Seems to me. Could be wrong. It would be cool to have somebody like Murray Blair on sometime. We can actually talk about this. But anyway, back to our home setups.
Yeah.
When I send recordings of myself recorded by this guy, this is it, right? And it is a stereo mic, okay? But when I send recordings to people recorded by this guy with no special effects or post-production, I don't do anything to it at all. People ask me all the time, how do you get such a great sound out of your recordings?
Yeah.
And granted, I don't really use this setup that often because it's so complicated to get going as well.
Isn't that a double whammy there as well? It's so much harder to set up and get it set up just right. And then the result isn't as nice. What?
Exactly. It's not as nice and it's not as genuine. Yeah. It's not as nice and it's not as genuine.
I do think it's really interesting to think about it. Not that there was necessarily someone who in an engineering kind of way invented the bagpipes and said, I want it to sound this specific way, right? But any instrument, if any thought has gone into the direction things are pointing or the way things are balancing, in this case, maybe the balance between the drone reeds and the chanter reed, etc., they're probably being made, those developments are happening toward the idea that there would be any listener is only sitting in one specific place at a time.
Amen, my brother.
And so my bagpipes, the way that they're made at this point, even if there's not specific conscious thought going into this, there's just the way chanter reeds come out and the way that drone reeds come out and all of this. The idea is, even if I have 10 people listening to me, each one of them is only in one place. And so I think it makes sense. Like you used the word, did you use the word genuine? That your recordings are more, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Totally. And it's one of the problems with multiple microphones that are placed all over the place is that, sure, those give you sound from a whole bunch of different vantage points, but that's not actually how we listen in real life.
Yeah,
and so
no human has ever done that in person.
That's right. And so what you end up with is an alien experience. Now, you might get a very clean, interesting experience with the multiple mics if you have a very skilled engineer doing things, but that's never been my real reaction to it. For example, when you listen to a pipe band live, it's so much better than when you listen to a pipe band that comes from the studio with a million microphones where there's been an engineer in there doing a whole bunch of things and editing out mistakes and doing all that stuff. It's like, just give it to me. By the way, you usually don't really hear a lot of mistakes, but I digress. I'm not an actual expert in this field, but I kind of know enough to be dangerous. And then all of my actual experience experimenting with these different things points to the fact that, man, you can do a lot with a simple, decent stereo microphone. Like inside of this little bubble, it's 2 microphones. Because we do want, going back to being genuine and realistic, humans have 2 ears, just like we have 2 eyes. And just like our 2 eyes give us depth perception, our 2 ears being slightly spaced apart, and by the way, there's a big hunk of meat in between the 2, right? And so that gives us hearing depth perception as well. And we get our audio from 2 different sources, and it helps us put things in perspective, and you can add real color to sounds. When you take one headphone out and you listen to music, it's not nearly as cool.
Not as nice. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So if you can record the pipes in that way, as a matter of fact, in school, I did a lot of electroacoustic music and we did a lot of field recordings and stuff. The oldest trick in the book, and it was so effective, was we used to have a styrofoam head, just like styrofoam head. And it had 2, it looked like they were just wearing those old school earbuds, but it was actually 2 microphones.
Yeah.
So you would actually record the sound as if a human head was listening to the sound. And usually the recordings that you got from that little head were really impressive.
Yeah.
And better than the other 27 mics that you'd set up around the space to like be able to mix it together and do something cool. It's like just the styrofoam head guy, usually pretty good.
Next episode, you're going to see in the background like a stolen mannequin head with microphones taped to the sides of it. Because
you should try it.
I want to try it.
Yeah. And by the way, that sort of points me to my golden rules of recording. Here's the trick to getting great recordings is you take a simple stereo recorder with manual gain, right? No auto gain. So simple stereo recorder, no auto gain, and just put the recorder where you would like to listen to you play. That's the secret. Another problem or another mistake people make is they set up the recorder and then they blast the chanter right at the recorder 2 feet away.
No one wants to put their head right there. While you're playing
exactly.
bagpipe.
Now, if you were listening to that bagpiper, is that where you'd want to sit?
Definitely
2 feet away from the chanter? Definitely not. Jim, if you're listening to Jack Lee play or Stuart Little or something in recital, where do you want to sit?
I feel like I would want to be somewhere between 25 and, probably about 25 feet away is where I'd want to be.
Sure.
Maybe that's just me, but I'd want to be that far away.
I think that'd
so
be
that
the high end. I think that'd be the high end. Like the ideal place to listen to a piper, especially if you're inside, let's go with 15 to 25 feet, somewhere in that range. That's the best range. Just, Jim, for the purpose of the exercise, if you sit further than 25 feet away, what starts to happen? Let's pretend you're listening to an indoor recital.
Yeah, if it's an indoor recital, then I'm going to start hearing what's bouncing off the walls just as much as I'm hearing what's coming straight from them. And so I start to lose clarity for what I'm hearing further away.
Exactly. So the further away you move, the more of the room sound you get as opposed to the source. And then if you move closer than 15 or 10 or 15 feet, if you start to move closer than that, what do you get?
Probably so much chanter that I've got no idea what's going on with the larger balance of the drones and everything. It's
sure, absolutely. And the piper's movements start to distract you a lot more, right?
Yeah.
The closer you get. So there's that sweet spot. And by the way, there's no exact sweet spot. And I think there's a little bit of room for whatever you prefer there. I actually like a little bit extra room sound. So maybe I would prefer to sit slightly further away than some other people. But that thought process, if you want to get a good recording of yourself playing or a good recording of somebody else, put the microphone where you would want to listen to it. That's a secret. By the way, should you put the microphone down on the ground, up in the ceiling, or where should you put it? You should put it wherever your ears would like to be.
Right. About 5.5 feet off the ground.
Yep, absolutely.
Ish. Maybe you're a sitting audience. But.
Exactly. And so that's like the baseline. That's the baseline for how you get a good recording. Where do you like to play? What's the best place to play your pipes?
I've found my favorite place, which is a spot in my backyard that's just the right distance from my vinyl fence. It does something magical to the sound. Yeah. But I joke with people all the time, like bagpipes are an outside instrument. I feel like that's
could be
the ideal.
And you can record yourself playing outside. Absolutely. You might get more background noise and you might get wind sound and there might be some challenges.
That is a challenge.
But if that's the place where bagpipes sound the coolest, that would be a cool place to record. I remember one time Duncan Miller recorded Stuart Little playing at, I think it was Terry Lee's house, just because Stuart loved the sound of his pipes when he practiced at Terry Lee's house. And Duncan was like, let's just record you in that space It was like I don't know, like a bootleg that went around at some point, just MP3s of Stuart playing at Terry Lee's house. And yeah, sure enough, it did get a great sound. And it was just the raw recordings from that bagpiper playing in that space. I think Duncan had one of those. What were they called? M boxes or something. It used to be a simple thing you could plug into your MacBook and then you could record straight into Pro Tools. Of course, that kind of stuff nowadays, it's all a dime a dozen. Anybody can do it for pretty cheap. But once you get into the engineering and the EQ and the mix, and not only is it extremely high barrier to just get started recording yourself, in my experience, unless you're working with a super skilled engineer, the result is seldom better.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, and that makes sense. And don't worry, Andrew, you're not dashing my hopes or dreams in any way, because I'm genuinely just having fun with toying around with stuff. That's the rewarding part of it.
What is cool about 3 microphones is if you do a recording and you're like, man, I wish my bass was a little more prevalent. Instead of finding a new bass reed and like developing the sound of your pipes, you can literally just
I think I'll turn the bass up.
Turn up the bass. Yeah, exactly.
I did that
which
this
is
weekend.
kind of cool. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, and it was also handy. Of course, the bass microphone, the drone microphone was picking up some chanter, so I could also turn the high end down a bit, and that mellowed out the chanter that was coming through there a bit more. So things like that I'm just having fun with that. And there are some artists, some recording and performing bagpipe artists who I have seen and heard do work with a single microphone and with really specific microphones inside of their drones, really specific. And both of these are situations where they're being done by experts, and they both have blown my mind. And so there's probably a way to make just about anything magical if you know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm not making magic
find that,
yet.
That if I love the sound that's produced by someone's ingenious microphone array, usually what I fall in love with is the story of how they did it. And yeah, I guess if it makes you enjoy the music more, it makes you enjoy the music more. But for the most part, bagpipers are recording themselves playing in a solo situation or in a band situation. And in those cases, my personal thesis, and by the way, it saved me a lot of time and money. Because at some point I just had to stop, right? At some point it was like, wait, this doesn't actually work. And simple is actually working better. And then the good news for pipers listening is that you can buy, they actually have adapters now for your iPhone.
Oh yeah, we talked about this once.
It's a $99 adapter. Yep, Jim, there you go. You got
There's
one.
the Android version.
Yep, and look, just show them the knob on the front of it. So it's got a knob.
Physical gain adjustment.
Yep, and so you can just set the gain to whatever level makes sense for you. Plug that into your phone, press record on your video recorder, and you can have high quality video and audio, and it's magical and it's great. And that's what I recommend everybody start with. I have this standalone thing because, like I said, I want it to be armed, ready to go in my practice room at all times. That's the main reason. And by the way, I bought this long time ago. It has a video camera that records good quality video and audio at the same time. And that was a little more expensive, but still, it's still in your Christmas budget, if you know what I'm saying.
What wasn't as expensive as 3 microphones, multiple stands, an audio interface for the computer.
Yeah. The interface for the computer is very valuable. So if you're into doing Logic sessions or sessions on your, digital audio workstation, and you want to use the software on your computer to create Metallica covers or whatever you're into, that it is really handy to have a good audio interface where you can record your pipes directly in. So there are applications for fancier setups, 100%.
Yeah. So I feel a little bit like maybe there's some value to just taking a moment to point specifically at different use cases for recording, because I feel like I'm not in a position right now to be like producing high quality recordings that I would be like selling to the public or something like that. But if I were, I can imagine situations where a good solid single microphone would be what I would want. I can also imagine situations where multiple mics would be what I wanted.
Let me just
on what I'm trying to make. Oh, go ahead.
A single microphone. Just remember, I advocate a stereo microphone, which is technically two.
To be clear, yeah.
Which is technically 2 microphones, one that records into the left side and one that records into the right side. They're usually placed close together, and like this one is a stereo microphone. It looks like one, but there's actually 2 in there. But I digress. Yes. So there are some situations where you might want single and some where you might want multiple.
Yeah, and that's a use case, which is like the professional production or even semi-professional production. It's fun to do DIY at home recording stuff and put it on Bandcamp or YouTube or something. So I'm all for that for sure, of course. But the use cases that I think are way more common for me personally, at least, are ways to review my own playing to get ahead of the nerves, because feeling like there's a camera running is similar, for me at least, to feeling like there's a crowd watching me, and to share with others, either just for fun or for feedback. And in those situations, I feel like I have been, or certainly could have been, a little bit intimidated by the idea of getting into recording myself, because I maybe was under the impression that I needed to spend a lot of money and learn a lot of things in order to do it.
Yeah.
And you're clarifying here, no, you can get really good recordings with really basic, simple tools.
Yeah. Yep. What's the band? There's a band that recorded an entire album with just one microphone in the room.
Googling. Actually, in the bagpiping sphere, Ross Ainsley has done some of his more recent projects have been more, maybe not single mic. No, I think that is the case. I think it was maybe not Pool, his most recent releases. Maybe it was something he was doing before that. But I remember watching video of it happening at there's that recording studio he likes, the Tea House, I think it's called, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Where, and I think this is how he did that album with Bridget Campbell and Brian, shoot. I feel like such a jerk. You should never forget the accompanist's name. Steve Bryan? Anyway, that last album that they did, I think that they might have done that with a single condenser mic. I could be remembering wrong, but I think they just set up one mic, live takes, everybody together. And I remember hearing Ross talk about how that's what he wanted. He wanted that feeling of, here are multiple musicians playing together and you are the audience,
Hot take, it's what the listener wants too. It's like, whenever I hear a super produced solo performance, I'm always like, why did they super produce that? It doesn't seem real. It seems like a museum piece. When I listen, I'm like, I don't want to go to the museum typically. Not always. Look, this is all just sort of, there can be great exceptions to this, but I don't want to feel like I'm in a museum when I put on my headphones and listen to music. I want to feel like there's something awesome going on. I also do feel that super produced music to me really speaks to me, in the sense that sometimes your production plays a role in the performance of the music. Yeah. Like the Talisk album. Talisk is, it's the head of the entire Scottish Enlightenment. Talisk, incredible. But like
we're referring to the popularity of trad music as the Scottish Enlightenment. I like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But their studio album, I forget the exact name of it because the
really
name is
anything
irrelevant.
They've recorded is high.
But the most recent one, the most recent one is legit in my top 10 albums of all time in any genre. Like, it's incredible. Yeah. It's the perfect album, and it's super produced. There's tons of stuff going on there that they've added in post-production, but it makes the music better, and it just sucks you in, and it's so cool. It's like film music mixed with electronic dance music mixed with incredible trad playing. It's so cool. But in that case, like, that kind of stuff adds to the music, and it's part of, I wouldn't be surprised if it was part of how the music is conceived, right? And so that's cool. So it's not always bad. But when we're just listening to a solo piper play, I want to just listen to what it sounds like in the room that it was recorded, without too many knobs being twisted around and stuff.
I'm curious what you think of another sort of like use case for recording oneself, Andrew. And that is, bagpipes are maybe not the only instrument like this, but at least somewhat unique in that they don't sound to me when I'm playing them the way they sound to other people. Because I'm strapped into the middle of it, and I've got drones shooting off this way and the chanter down low shooting off this way and stuff, right?
Yes, exactly.
If I'm anywhere else, it's going to sound different than what it sounds like to the person who's playing it. Maybe that's valuable to get that experience of using your recording device to be an audience member for a moment and realize, when I think that I love the sound of my bass drone, that's when I'm strapped into it. Maybe I don't love it as much when I'm an audience member. And then I can make a decision. Am I going to set up my instrument for the audience or for me and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a huge issue, right? Sometimes when you look out into the universe, what you think you're seeing is what's really there.
Yes, sometimes
but it's
we
not.
Do think that.
It's not. Like all of our senses are just electrical firings in our brain. And what you think, you actually don't know. And
Oh,
human beings are extremely fallible. Like, I've long since become immune, but have you ever, listeners out there and other people, have you ever listened to a recording of your voice being played back and you have a panic? Oh
it's the
no,
worst.
I
Yeah.
sound like that. I sound
Yeah.
terrible. I hate it. That's a common thing. And by the way, same thing with the piping. Sometimes you think you're amazing, and then the recording teaches you still got a ways to go, bro. And then, by the way, I've often had the opposite experience where I thought my performance wasn't that good, but it was. Oh yeah.
Still got it.
I remember having that experience, and this is just a personal anecdote, not to be confused with gloating or bragging. But
We'll do some of that later.
I remember playing at the silver medal at Kansas City thinking, oh, I think I had a good performance. And then I heard a recording that someone made of the performance, which, by the way, happened to be on a Zoom device with the gain set like responsibly. So it was a nice recording. And it was just made from a person sitting in the audience. But anyway, I do remember listening back to that recording thinking, wow, that was even better than I thought.
Like wondering, wait, was that me? Was that someone else?
I can't believe that was me. Like, it sounds like a real bagpiper. That was a great day, great experience.
I bet it was, yeah.
Yep, recording. There you go. You got to do it.
Yeah, the
Commandment
moral
11,
of the story
Jim.
is do it one way or another, right?
Yep. You want to record what you're doing. Now, you might not want to record your entire practice session for strategic reasons, because you already pointed out in this discussion, one of the greatest reasons to record yourself is to put pressure on yourself to play well.
Yeah.
And see how you do when the pressure is on. We have a thing in the dojo, which, by the way, I would recommend to everybody, which is called the one take rule. So it's good when you record yourself to set a time when you're going to perform, like maybe towards the end of your practice session. Set a specific time, like 9:15 a.m. is when I'm going to press the record button and I'm going to play whatever the thing is that you're going to play. And then whatever you do, that's the one that you go with. That's the one that you keep.
You got to send it. Yeah.
And if you really wanted to turn the pressure up on yourself, you could go live on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
That would be an incredible way to simulate a performance. And then usually what I do is whatever I get, I'll send it to a mentor or something like that and be like, this is what I got today. What do you think? And sometimes it was a train wreck, but when you send recordings that aren't perfect to a mentor and you're like, man, I'm so disappointed. This is what happened. I gave myself one chance to record and this is what happened. Sometimes they'll come back with great advice that's going to help you produce a better performance under pressure next time.
I've only had limited experience with this, but I have found it really useful. It's helped me also to see where, like in a piece I'm going to play for a performance, there might be parts that I need to work on more or that I just need to simplify. Like maybe the performance is tomorrow, and so I've set up the recording, or twice in my life have I gone live that I can think of anyway on Instagram, specifically for this purpose, being like, here's what I'm working on. I'm just going to imagine there are millions of people watching right now, because the real people watching, and there's maybe one person watching really, but it gets me in the headspace. But I realized, oh, you know what? Those tackums there are so muddy, and game day is tomorrow. I'm just not going to play them. Now I know I shouldn't make the attempt. I'm out of time.
Tackums are tough because usually they participate in the melody.
Tackums are so tough.
Yeah.
Reverse tackums, my goodness.
What's a reverse tackum?
When you do it backwards.
Oh, nice.
I think they come up in Bonnie Ann, actually. I was thinking there were some reverse tackums there. It's been too long. I'll have to do some review later.
Yeah.
Or maybe there shouldn't be, but I was playing them backward.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. All right. A few thoughts on recording then for the people. Hey, everybody. Andrew Douglas here from the Piper's Dojo. And I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us. If you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that, your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.